So you're uber successful. Great. But you got to the finish line and your wife and kids don't even want to be with you. That's a problem. And the guys that are super successful, they focus on this much of stuff. And then the rest is their life.
The way that I look at it is that first of all, you have to step back and you figure out what's your purpose. What's your big why? Why are you doing all this stuff? And in most cases, it's going to be some family-oriented thing. You're building the business for your family's freedom. That's why you're doing it. But then eventually, like at some point, the business becomes all-consuming. Yeah. And at some point, somehow, a lot of people just flip that as the most important thing.
Craig, welcome to the show, man. The world's most disciplined man is what they're calling you.
Hey, it's really productive. I'm sure there's a lot of special forces and Army guys and all that good stuff that listen to this and they're like, come on, this guy. And so maybe like we could say civilian, but I'm really a very undisciplined person who built incredibly effective systems that make the stuff automatic to get done.
Dude, I want to ask you this because you are very disciplined. You have amazing systems. I've known a lot of people who have coached with you. And my question, before we get into the book, my question is, like, when you were starting out your nutrition business and your coaching business on that side of things, have you always been disciplined?
I think in a way, because in the 90s I did homework, and for anybody that grew up in the 90s, right. Nobody did homework, but I did like a little bit of homework. I had like a routine. Like I went to school. Then I went I did 2 hours or 3 hours at an after school job every single day from the age I was like 13 until I got into college. And then from there, I went home, I had dinner. Then I went to the local YMCA and I lifted for like an hour and a half. I mean, I was a big kid in high school, not so much now. And then I went home and did homework. And then I played like a couple of games on my Sega Genesis of NHL hockey. And so like that's pretty disciplined. But on the weekend, I was a binge drinker, even like in high school, because that's what you do in Canada. You play hockey and drink beer, you drink beer and play hockey. It doesn't really matter what order. And so I continued that on for a long time. So then when I was a personal trainer, I was like uber disciplined Monday to Saturday afternoon, but then Saturday afternoon to Sunday morning, I was not. And so I guess there's something in my background. I grew up on a farm, so you see it. I saw it in my father. Even though he was an alcoholic, he was a very disciplined alcoholic, and then he got up and fed the cows every morning.
Being an alcoholic takes consistency and a lot of discipline to maintain that sort of,
It certainly does. It's like when I live in Vancouver, and there's well-known homeless population in Vancouver, but like they got systems, man.
Yeah, right.
They got systems, and I don't mean that like I'm not making fun of them. Just like they have incredible systems to operate. Most of them are junkies, and it's like somehow
to survive, you kind of have to.
They do like these garage sales. It's wild, man. There's this little world down in East End of Vancouver.
It's funny you said about the 90s, because that was very much, obviously, other than the school portion, because I was not the school kid, nor the sports, but I worked, and I did a lot. I worked a lot. I mean, it's so much to where after the 10th grade, I dropped out and just kept working.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you think that there's something with that our age group, like being born early 80s and then kind of growing up in the 90s?
Sometimes I believe in the simulation or whatever that Elon talks about, because like my life, like I grew up at the right times. I feel
same
for everything.
Same.
Like old enough to use the internet, but not too young to like get messed up by the internet, and so everything worked out. And I thought the 90s were like amazing, and I do believe that there's something about our generation, because we didn't have phones.
Yeah, you had to do shit,
and I think that really ruins.
Yeah, you had to do things. You had to call people.
Yeah, like it's like getting a hold of somebody was so hard.
You just showed up. I just showed up everywhere.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of doing it. I just hope that somebody would come to my house, because I lived like right on the edge of the city, so someone would always have to drive and get me when once he hit 16. And I was just like, I'm just going to sit here and look out the window and see if anybody drives in tonight. And other than that, it was like no other way to get a hold of anybody.
That's the truth, man. I feel like those were good days. Those were really good days.
I do feel like they were good days, and I don't know if there was a work ethic to it. I know a lot of guys who, just took care of themselves essentially because parents were working.
Yeah, that was me.
The latchkey kids.
That was me and my brother.
We definitely, like my mom let me not drive, but when I was 8 years old and I wanted to play baseball in the local baseball thing. I had to bike like 3 miles at age 8 on a no gear BMX bicycle to get to the baseball diamond, which was in the country. And so like I'm biking down these deserted country roads, and it's like,
Craig,
she'd get thrown in prison if she, let her kid do that.
Speaking of that, so I was the same way. I would ride this BMX bike, but it would be miles. I lived in Panama City Beach, and I would literally ride probably 7 miles to work one way on a BMX bike. On the highway.
That's a hike, man.
But to me, it was like nothing. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to work. Bye. And I'm out.
Yeah, right.
I posted a video. A woman in Georgia got arrested because her kid walked to the Jiffy store to get a drink. Man. Down the street from their house. They called it like child endangerment. I couldn't wrap my head around it. They put her in handcuffs and wanted to call like child services. Anyways. The world that we're living in now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I like to think that there was something special about those days that made some good guys.
Yeah, I'm glad to have grown up in them. But hey, when you were doing your coaching stuff, you were just as you were disciplined.
I was disciplined, but then I was undisciplined. So like I said, in high school, I worked during the week and did homework. And then when I got into college, I did the same thing, but I bench drank like an idiot on the weekend. And then once I was a personal trainer, I was training Canada's richest people in downtown Toronto. Like I've literally trained the richest man in Canada, and I would be perfect from, I'd get to bed I'd be perfect from Monday morning until Saturday afternoon because I train clients Saturday morning too. Yeah. And then I go and start drinking with my buddies, and then I'd stop 3, 4, 5, 6 on Sunday morning and then be hungover all day. And then technically I would go to bed on time on Sunday night, but the anxiety and like, I really wanted to go to bed at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon on Sunday because I was so tired, but I'm like, I got to stay up till like at least 7 or 8. Yeah. And by the time 7 or 8 came around, I had a second wind and I couldn't fall asleep. And then it ruined me till like Wednesday or Thursday of the week. But I was up at 4:30 in the morning working in my online business till 5 o'clock. Then I was on the bus downtown Toronto. Yeah. 6 o'clock till noon, clients, noon till 2, lift heavy weights, 2 till 6, train people, go home and sit in front of the computer for another hour trying to work on my stuff and then crash. And that was my life.
And that's where the first book, Unstoppable, came from, right? You mentioned anxiety.
Yeah, because I had the anxiety attacks a few years after that. But and most of that was it's all my stupid behavior. Like don't cry for me. That's for sure. I got myself into that mess.
Which you said you call yourself out on every bit of it.
Yeah. It was binge drinking. It was not having I didn't do any journaling. I kept all my thoughts kind of bottled up in my head. And for me, journaling or writing is better than talking to people. But my wife is convincing me to talk more often now. That's a work in progress. But, that definitely got me into a bad spot. But I think the routines and systems were part of getting me out of it. But what I talk about in the book is that you can go too far with this stuff. And I went too far with it personally. And I see a lot of people go too far with it. And if it doesn't serve the ultimate mission, if it doesn't serve the ultimate mission, your purpose, your vision in life, doing a whole bunch of good things can make a wrong. 2 wrongs can't make a right, but 10 rights can make a wrong. Yeah. And that's what I've seen in a lot of my friends' lives.
Yeah, and I can see that I've even had this own personal journey where, you're doing hard things for the sake of doing hard things. And just to be disciplined. And you outline this in this book, The Dark Side of Discipline, which I think is super needed now. And
thank you.
And it really it hit home. And I kind of had I have my own personal journey with it, is because for me, leaving special operations, I'm a disciplined guy, but obviously it takes discipline and being able to do hard things to be able to do that job. But the same thing, like you let off steam and you take a foot off the gas. But when I left the military, and I wrote a whole book about that as well, called The Excommunicated Warrior, the 7 Stages of Transition, where I talked about kind of really taking my pack off and becoming undisciplined, and where things really started to spiral out. But then when I realized what was happening in my life and how I was having depression and anxiety, and I was just, gaining weight that I had never had before, and my life was kind of falling apart, I went super disciplined the other direction, kind of like what you're talking about. And I mean, to the point, like, no drinking, and I mean, hardcore, like waking up 5 a.m. club 7 days a week, etc. And you freaking nailed it with the Chuck story, which maybe that's not his name, but you freaking nailed it, where it's like, yeah, I was super disciplined and business was getting better, life was getting better, but the things that really actually mattered were starting to fall apart.
It's a fine line, man. Double-edged sword is another way of looking at it, but it's like, discipline will save you. Trust me. Like if you're an alcoholic, if you're addicted to anything, discipline's going to be your lifeline, whether it's challenge, not one of these online challenges, or, David Goggins style running marathons or whatever. Discipline will save you. But then you're like, the thing that saves you puts you in a prison. And for me, and I think a lot of this stuff is that, discipline is not only natural to me, but it also, I find a lot of benefit in it. And I've set myself up, like, my life looks really disciplined to somebody, but I enjoy the heck out of it now. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff that I did, I had an exercise streak of 1,000 days. And I talk about in the book how I was working out in the SAS lounge at the Copenhagen airport in the bathroom, doing push-ups on the floor. And like, what am I doing? What kind of ridiculous loser are you to do this? Like, you're not winning any gold medals. Like, just, bro, let it go. And that's like a harmless example. But then the harmful examples are when somebody's, joining a triathlon, their marriage is on the rocks, and, it's 15-year marriage, and, them and their wife, they're like two ships passing in the night as Uber drivers for their children, and they're really just roommates, and there's no spark in the marriage. And it's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go join and, do a triathlon. And now I'm away from the house 15 hours a week, in addition to all the other stuff. Like, that's a, is a triathlon a good thing? Sure. It's a hard thing. It's a challenging thing. You might be healthier from it, but it ain't going to help the level 10 problem in your life, which is your marriage. And a lot of people will, default to something like that because you'll get a good feeling. Like, oh, hey, I went out and did a workout today. Yeah. I got a good feeling. But to try and turn the ship around on a 15-year-old marriage that's, gone cold, you ain't going to see positive results from that, from like a date night, or going to buying flowers or something, or a card. Like, you're going to have to do some heavy, deep work to turn that ship around, and it might be months until the spark comes back. And most people just like, man, that's the hard thing. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to like pick something else. I'm going to start a new diet. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. Like, a lot of business owners do that when the real problem, they can't close a barn door when it comes to sales, but they're just going to start a YouTube channel instead of like, going and learning real sales skills. It's just over and over and over again we see it, and that's human nature. That's the thing. And being able to step back and do the self-reflection, introspection, the hard thinking, and figure out what really matters in life, and then say no to all the other stuff. That's like when people say I do hard things, you sit down and do your thinking and say no to all the distractions, and then you've done a hard thing.
And you're talking about what you outlined, the discipline trap, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. Can you articulate, like you kind of just said it right there, the level 10 effort into a level 1 problem. Can you articulate what that means?
Yeah. So, where I came up with this is at Bedros' Fitness Business Summit. So, this was before you and I met, but Bedros used to run that event. It's probably like 10 or 12 years he ran it. And I spoke at it almost every single year. And I'd go up on stage and I'd look out in the audience, and it grew for like 750 people in the audience. And I'd look out and I see, oh, look, there's Alex and Josh and Dana, and same people, same seats every year. And last year they came to the event and they were 8% body fat and had $8 in their bank account. And they get 2 full days. Like Andy Frisella would speak, Bedros would speak, I'd speak. All these people give them sales and marketing out the yin yang for 2 or 3 days. And then, of course, on the breaks, they'd go and talk to the other trainers that were there and talk about workouts and nutrition. So what they do when they went home? They went home and they took the sales and marketing stuff and put it up on the shelf. And all they did was think about the workouts and nutrition ideas that they got from other trainers. And so fast forward a year, they come back to the event. Now they're 7% body fat and they got $7 in their bank account, right? So they put a level 10 effort into their level 1 problem, which was their body fat. Their body fat's not a problem. Like going from 8% body fat to 7% body fat does nothing for you in the grand scheme of life. They put a level 1 effort into their level 10 problem, which was learning how to market and sell their fitness programs or their gyms or workout programs or whatever. And so they came back broker the next year than they were the year before. And so we see this all the time. And that's like an extreme example of the level 10, level 1. And I call these people, the ones that, open up their Instagram and see somebody, doing an ice plunge today. So it's like, oh man, I got to go and do that. It's a wild horse. You're ambitious, you got high energy, you really want to do all the things. And that's the problem with guys like you and I. And
I think he's talking to me.
We want to do all the things, man. You can't, the old phrase is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Except for us. You can lead us to water. We'll drink all the water. We'll snort all the oats. And we're out there like, going crazy because we want to do everything. And the problem is that these wild horses are off chasing and, running around in different directions, and they end up exhausted and not making progress on what really matters. And so the other thing is that it's easier to put, even a level 5 effort into something that's new. Yeah. But it's a level 2 problem. Like it's easier, again, my sales, I'm not good at sales. I do sales all day. I suck at it. I'm going to go and start a YouTube channel. Well, that doesn't make sense, but you're going to get a dopamine hit. You put your first YouTube video up. Yay. You feel good. But to sit down and like go to a sales seminar for a weekend and do objection handling and get, destroyed because you're not very good at it. And eventually you get better at it, but it's like a spazzy white belt going into a jiu-jitsu competition and being put in with blue belts. They're going to get destroyed. They don't want to do that. So the end result is we're chasing entertainment. And so our ultimate definition of discipline is to identify your level 10 problem, your marriage, your drinking problem, your health issue. Maybe you got a business partner that you have to cut ties with, but you're afraid to have the difficult conversation. Maybe you got financial problems. Maybe you're in debt. You got a level 10 problem. Everybody's got a level 10 problem in life. I got a level 10 problem. We're always going to have a level 10 problem. It's just that we get rid of them. The ultimate definition of discipline is identifying the level 10 problem and putting a level 10 effort into it. And everything else is just entertainment. That's it. That's it. And so I use the example of Charlie Munger in the book. And Charlie Munger, if anybody doesn't know, Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett's mentor. And Charlie Munger passed away at 99.9 years old.
Yeah, so Craig, tell me about Charlie Munger.
Yeah, so Charlie Munger is somebody who you would not think is disciplined if he's some old guy. And unfortunately, he passed away when he was 99.9 years old. But what Charlie did was Charlie figured out how to run his own race. And that's really what discipline is. He was always putting a level 10 effort into his level 10 problems. Even though, most people think of discipline as somebody who works out twice a day in cold plunges, Charlie actually stopped exercising after he left the Army at age 18. He never exercised a day for the rest of his life. Lived a long time and had everything that a man wants: money, power, and respect. Because he knew what mattered, knew what didn't, stayed away from what didn't, and focused on what did. And he made Warren Buffett the richest man in the world and made tens of thousands of people millionaires. And he was able to just live the life that he wanted. And I think that's what I'm trying to get in this book, is everybody to figure out how to run their own race and say no to everything else and forget the fact that even if you're running your own race and you're running in the opposite direction of everybody else, you got to have the discipline to do that.
Yeah, I've noticed that with really, I hate saying, like, I don't want to say like high performers, but really super successful people, right? I've noticed the trend that they focus on their unique ability, their zone of genius the most, and they don't worry about anything else. And you kind of talked about it in the past, like, I'm not worrying about making a bed. I'm worried about the things that really, really matter in my life. And as we get older, those things change, right? And I like how you talk about the level 10 effort into like your marriage, your health, your kids, because a lot of guys, and including myself, like that's why this thing smacked me. And I felt like I was reading a little bit of my story because, 4 or 5 years ago, I was that guy. I was the discipline trap guy. I'm like going hard in the paint and all of the hard things because I was coming from such an undisciplined reset, right? But then I did start having problems with my kids and my wife and the actual things that mattered. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, so you're uber successful, great, but you got to the finish line and your wife and kids don't even want to be with you. Like that's a problem. And the guys that are super successful, they focus on this much of stuff, and then the rest is their life.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is that first of all you have to step back. You step back and you figure out what's your purpose, what's your big why, why are you doing all this stuff? And in most cases, those people that are listening to this, it's going to be some family oriented thing. You're building the business for your family's freedom. That's why you're doing it. But then eventually, like at some point, the business becomes all consuming. Yeah. And whether it's we're trying to beat a competitor or we're actually building the business now because people out there like, patting us on the back, people that we've never met, never will meet, they're giving us the internet claps on the back. And at some point, somehow a lot of people just flip that as the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that's painful to me to see because I've done so many one-on-one intensive coaching sessions and small group sessions and, ran mastermind programs where, on the outside, it looks like somebody has it all, but on the inside, they're close to throwing it all away.
I've been that guy.
And I came from not a great family.
Yeah.
My father, he was a hard worker, but he was an alcoholic. And my mom was amazing. And, she was the complete opposite. I have no idea how they even got together. They're so different. But it was a dysfunctional family, and I looked at my family and said, I never want my family to be like this. I want to have a great relationship with my wife. I want to, be present with my kids, and not be an alcoholic and not embarrass my kids.
Right.
And so for me, family is that driver, and it's the foundation. I make sure that the family is taken care of first. I'm not saying you can't do jujitsu, that you can't do marathons, that you can't work out and get big and strong and all that stuff. But you got to get the other stuff first. Mm-hmm. And then you can fit in the other endeavors and pursuits as long as the home front is taken care of. And that's the most important thing for the majority of people that come into my world.
You talked about clarity, having clarity around what your level 10 problems are. And so many people, like you said, so many people don't want to sit down and think.
It is the hardest thing of all. And so there's 3 steps to it. First, we figure out somebody's big why. Then I want them to give me their 3-year vision. Tell me exactly, as if you were writing it from the future. Tell me exactly what house you're going to be living in, what your family's going to look like, what the relationship with your wife is going to look like, what your income is going to look like, what your business is going to look like, or your career, what your hobbies are going to look like, what you do as a family, the vacations that you take, the things that you don't do. Like paint a very clear picture, because that's your North Star, your straight line to success. And you can make every decision run through the filter of, does that move me towards that vision, or does it take me off track? And if it takes you off track, it's an easy no.
It's funny you say that, because I do tell people, I'm like, I want to know if it's the dream trip, it's the dream car. If it's the dream car, I want to know every little detail. Like, what does the exhaust sound like when you hit the gas? What does the leather sound like when you sink into it? Like, I want that level of detail in your vision in your life. If you have a vision, it needs to be that freaking detailed.
Yeah, I call it the movie. Like, you're writing the movie script, because when you tell me the movie script, I'm watching it, and it needs to be like my favorite movie, that clear. And I love how you said, like, even the sound of the exhaust, because all different, certain cars have a certain exhaust. So after those 2 things, there's one more level, and I want to hear your short-term specific definition of success, specifically for discipline, because I get all these people coming to me and saying, I want to be more disciplined. What does that even mean?
Right. What is it to you?
1,000 people could tell me they want to be more disciplined. They might have 1,000 interpretations of it. The one guy wants to be on his phone less. One guy wants to lose 40 pounds. One guy wants to go to the gym. One guy wants to stop drinking. tell me specifically what you want to achieve with your discipline and why, and then we can build the plan to get you there in the smallest number of moves. You know, there's no medals for taking the hard way to get discipline.
I love that. And that's the truth, because in any investment, any business, or even in, matter of fact, let's even put this into fitness. I want to work out the least and get the maximum results. I want to invest the least and get the maximum rate of return. Well, why would you not do that in all the areas?
It's the 80-20.
Yeah. Why would you not want to do that in all your other areas of your life?
Yeah, you know, when I did jujitsu for a while, but it's not a great sport to take up when you're 47 years old. So I've taken a pause from it. But I wanted to learn the maximum amount in the minimum amount of getting beat up. You know,
I'm a glutton. I'm still at it, and it will never leave me. But
I love it. I love the fact you did. Was it the 6 weeks you did every, or was it 100 days you went every day?
30, and ended up. I actually miscounted. It was 31s. It was 2 sessions. It was supposed to be 60 sessions in 30 days as a white belt.
Oh,
I highly do not recommend anyone ever do this ever. It was horrible.
No, I was going a couple times a week, and I couldn't get my shoulders, you know, my arms above my shoulders, and I got 3 kids under 3. I got to pick them up, and I was like, one of these things got to go.
Congratulations, by the way. You went hard in the paint on the kids too. You went from no kids up until a certain age, and you're like, that's it. Yeah. I'm going all in.
And I think that's another reason that I'm so focused on the family, is because I'm an old dad, and I waited a long time to have this, and I don't want to miss out.
It happens. Take it from a guy who started having kids at 20 years old. Craig, it happened. It just all happens so fast, man. Being able to restart and do it all over again with my son has been a huge blessing, because now I really truly realize they're going to be 20 before you know it, and you're going to be like, "What happened? Where did the time go?" Yeah. And anybody that has older kids knows that. Hey, I want to get through all this because I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Talk to me about the period of peak performance.
Right. So what we found is, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Which is great. Yeah.
At the top, we have motivation. And motivation is like this spark that'll get you going a little bit, but nobody's going to change their life based on motivation. Under that, we have challenges. There's some benefits to challenges, particularly around the community aspect of it. You know, and it gives you like this start point, midpoint, end point. But you know, once you've done the challenge, a lot of people just relapse. And my entire first business was built on 12-week weight loss challenges. And as awesome as my program was, 30% of people gained the weight back, and then like joined another one 6 months later, because we were running these all the time. And it was like, hey, you were that weight the first time you did this. And it's just human nature for people to drop off. So then you get down to discipline. But discipline isn't even really where you want to be, because discipline and willpower are depletable resources. Mm-hmm. And willpower won't work. But, you know, Ben Hardy wrote that book. And it's true, because, you know, if you get up late and you over-caffeinate and you get stuck in traffic, and then you snap at people all day at work, and then your boss or your coworkers or some conflict at work depleted even more willpower, by the time you get home, you're grumpy, and, you know, the dog gets in your way and you yell at, you know, it's like, oh man, like what's going on here? And it's because you've depleted your willpower and discipline. So there has to be something more. And that's where the effortless discipline systems come in. They're the next level down below, because they're, you know, we're going down to the bottom of the foundation of this pyramid. And the effortless discipline systems, and we can dive deeper on these, the 3 words you really need to remember: elimination, preparation, and connection. And when you have those 3 things, we can show you how you can use them to become disciplined almost effortlessly, or at least make it really automatic to do the right things. Then underneath that, as you become disciplined and change your systems and start to build your behaviors and confidence, you change your identity. And this is one of my favorite things from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. You know, he talks so much about at the end of all of this, you have to change who you are as a person. You know, so anybody who walks around says, I can't lose weight, I'm always late. You know, if that's your identity, like I was once an introvert. I don't say I'm an introvert anymore, because that's a label that puts me in a box that holds me back. I have introverted tendencies. I really enjoy working on my own, but I'm not an introvert. It's two different things. And if you switch your mindset to, I'm the type of person who's a morning person who gets up and, really goes after it in the morning, even if, in the past, your behavior shows that it's not necessarily the same, that's one of the very important steps for you to develop the morning routines and habits that will get you to the next level. It's another thing that I did when nearly 15 years ago is I quit swearing. I'm not the type of person who swears. It's that easy. I quit drinking completely in 2021. I'm not a drinker. I just don't drink. The end. I don't need to, like, oh man, I really want to have a drink, but I'm going to hold out. I don't need to do that. I'm just not a drinker. No big deal. And then finally, underneath that allows you to set higher standards for yourself. And the standards are like operating codes or operating systems like a computer would have. That then, you no longer need discipline when you have an operating system and an identity that you feel you truly are. So I'm a polite and courteous gentleman. I never use my phone in the elevator. I say hello to people who come into the elevator. I don't swear. I don't drink. That's not the type of person I am. And listen, there's a great phrase from this guy named Naval Ravikant. He's a Silicon Valley investor. He's got a very famous book. And he said, you can't write the book until you've lived the book. And I used to have all the bad habits. And now I don't have too many because of the effortless discipline systems. Yeah. And again, I like to take the lazy way to doing things. And by eliminating things, doing better preparation, and being connected to people that make me play up a level in life, you can really change your life with that.
Yeah, I like you ended that with standards. I relate those to almost like your own personal core values, which I then in turn from my military days, I turned it into like those, because most people don't have what we would call in the military rules of engagement. And I feel like your core values or your standards are your rules of engagement for life. And most people don't think about, what are my rules of engagement for my life? What's my go and no go criteria? And when you start putting those in, it makes things, like you said, it makes things very simple. Like, I followed these guidelines and that's how I live my life.
I first wrote my rules for living in 2011. And it was just, one day I was out for a run, and it just like, I've got these rules. I'm going to go write them down, because people would often say, what would Craig do? My coaching clients would say, what would Craig do here? And I just wrote down, like, this is what I do. I get up at this time. I go to bed at this time. I don't swear. The first thing I do in the morning is write for an hour. And when we wrote the new book, I looked back on those rules and nothing has changed. Well, a couple of them have gotten better. It used to be like I didn't drink alcohol 2 hours before bed. Now I don't drink alcohol at all. But how I lived in 2011 is how I live now. And that's what we're aiming for, is core foundational beliefs and values that will not change because of something you saw on Instagram today. And not enough people have
right.
that.
Can you talk about, and you kind of touched on it, the role of identity and discipline, or the unbreakable identity?
Man, so if you change your identity, you can change a bad habit nearly overnight. So Bedros and I had this friend. He holds amazing parties. And this guy could drink, man. Like, he would drink 15 or 20 beers over a Saturday afternoon, like at his kid's birthday party or something. And I was like, man, he could just consume stuff. And then one day he decided, I'm not a drinker. And of all the people in the world, you would think like could just be able to shut it off like that, you wouldn't have chosen him, but he did it. And I've had another friend who, when they kind of read a bunch of my articles related to this book, they sent me a private message and said, man, I don't use pornography that much. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I read your content. It's like, I'm never going to do it again. So he's just the kind of guy who doesn't, I'm not the kind of guy who uses pornography. Like, that's all it takes in certain situations. We don't need the systems. We don't need elimination, preparation, connection. We don't need to do hard things. We just need to go, this is the type of person I am, and this is the type of person I'm not.
Changes. Those
are the boundaries. That's the operating system. And I don't even need to think about it anymore.
Change your story, change your life, right?
Exactly. Quote Bedros in there. And I use another super crazy extreme example. If in the book, I just say, because I say that standards eat discipline for breakfast. Yeah. Because if you put two people in a room, one's a vegan, one's a normal eater, and you starve them for 24 hours, and then you bring in a cheeseburger, the vegan ain't going to crack. He's got standards. Right. The other person, they might have willpower for 5 minutes, and then they're going to eat that cheeseburger. Right. Standards beat discipline for breakfast.
Can you talk about what the doom loop is?
Yeah, so the doom loop is where we do a bad behavior, and the bad behavior, and we just lead to another bad behavior, and the next thing you know, it's the same bad behavior over and over again. It might be that you come home stressed out from work, and you just sit down in front of the TV, you grab a beer, you grab some junk food, and you watch Netflix for the next 2 hours just to numb yourself. And it happens day after day after day after day, and you're in this doom loop. You can't get out of it. And the worst thing is that every time you do something, it actually makes it more ingrained in your nervous system. So, we have this phrase, guys have this phrase that I'm just going to do something and get it out of my system. Like, I'm going to go to Vegas one last time and get it out of my system. No, you're not. Every time you do something, you ingrain it deeper into your system. Right. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, I quote it a lot, but he has this great quote. Every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become, or you're going to become. And so if you do something, you're going to do it again. So now if we're in this doom loop, you're like, oh my gosh, well, if it's getting more and more ingrained in my system, how do I get out of it? And you need this circuit breaker. And the circuit breaker tends to be better planning and preparation. So if man, it's going to be another tough day at work, and then I'm probably going to go home and I'm probably going to binge eat and binge drink in front of Netflix, I need to do something about it. And you might need to do something extreme. So for example, I have coaching clients that have somebody change their Netflix password on a Sunday night, and then they give it back to them on Friday, so they can't watch Netflix during the week. I had another client who his assistant changed his Gmail password every morning at 9 o'clock and then gave it back to him at 5 o'clock. So you're breaking the loop there. It's through that elimination. And then the preparation to eat better, if you're eating poorly, is to do meal prep, order from a meal prep service, something like that. You just do better planning and preparation, and you're going to free yourself from that doom loop. The other thing I'll say is when you are removing a bad habit, if you just remove the bad habit, like, okay, I'm just not going to drink when I sit down and watch Netflix at night, you have a void. And you need to replace the bad habit with a good habit, or else you're going to default back to the bad habit. So you need to put something in place, whether it's, some type of soda or some other, protein drink or greens drink or whatever. You need something to replace that. Otherwise, you fall back on the bad behaviors. But the doom loop is something that we all find ourselves in from time to time. And when you notice it, you got to break that circuit and get out of it.
Yeah, you kind of already talked about the willpower alone will always fail. Like willpower
Absolutely.
over, a plan, standards, et cetera. What role would you say you're not an introvert? You have introvert tendencies. So interested to know what your opinion is. And you've worked with a lot of guys like, Bedros, myself, that do a lot of brotherhood stuff and a lot of gathering of men. What role would you say accountability, coaching groups, men's groups play into helping this doom loop and keeping men from continuously failing into this negative cycle?
Oh, man. I mean, you could almost skip the elimination and preparation if you just have the connection. Because with Bedros, like, he was the first guy that I ever took really seriously. I'd hired business coaches before, and I'd done like 80% of what they said. But I didn't care if I disappointed them. And when I met Bedros, I looked up to him as like the big brother I never had. And when he would say jump, I would jump like 10% higher, And when you find that person that you deeply do not want to disappoint, and it could be a single person, it could be a group, and when they know what you want to accomplish, you will do it. That's it. Because the secret to success is really finding somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint and being accountable to them. But you can't, if you have a goal, you can't keep it into yourself. You got to share it, even though if it might feel embarrassing. You might worry about, like, I don't know if I'll be able to accomplish this. Trust me, when you tell good people, they'll figure out a way to help you along the way to accomplish what you want. And there'll be some uncomfortableness. Sure. Bedros, made me very uncomfortable often on podcasts to be like, so what are you doing to find, Mrs. Right? Because he knew, like, that was, like, ultimately my goal. And he would call me out on it. But it was because he did that I was able to end up finding Mrs. Right and, having 3 little rights running around the house. So the accountability and the connection is key. And the public accountability aspect of it. So when you're in that community, proclaiming to everybody in the group that you're going to do something, if you have any integrity at all, that's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be a hypocrite.
Right. It's incredibly important. Like, and I think that men have become, over the years, have become so disconnected by the system of going to work, doing this, the family thing, and they don't have any sort of connection to be able to have an outlet to one. I always, you talk about your network is your net worth. It really is. And the more men that you can associate yourself with that have the same standards that you do, then the more successful you're going to become.
Man, I wouldn't say it makes it easy.
No, I think it makes it harder, actually, because now you have a higher standard that you have to follow.
Yes, I will say this though, that when you tell other good people what you want to achieve, other good people, like, without even trying, it's almost like, like you're automatically think, like, how can I help this?
I'm the same way. Somebody tells me, I'm like, shit, man, what can I do?
Yeah, exactly. I know this guy, he can do this, you should do this. Right. And so it makes it easier in that way, but it's a burn the boats moment for you. Mm-hmm. And when you say, like, yeah, I'm going to be this honorable man. Oh, dang. Now I got to be this honorable man. Sure. There's definitely some difficulty to it. I stumbled across this article that I talk about in the book about some guy in 2007. And I think he invented Twitch, which is like YouTube, I think, or something. And the guy's name is Justin. And he started this website in 2007 called justin.tv. And the whole idea was he was going to wear a camera on his head 24 hours a day. Now, I don't know what he did when he went to the bathroom, but, skipping that aside, I thought it was brilliant because I thought, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to act like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to act like there's a camera on my head all the time. And so, for example, even when I was reading the audiobook version, did you read the audiobook for yours?
No, I did. What I did was I had somebody read it because of timing. And then I did the podcast in between the chapters with another soft dude talking about their perception of the chapter that we're discussing. So,
okay. Yeah. So doing an audiobook is like running a mental marathon because you have to get every sentence perfectly right. And if you don't, you have to go back and reread it. And you have to have the same energy and so on and so forth. So it is actually, it's very physically difficult. And so when I was reading it I was actually reading it on Valentine's Day, and there were points in it where when I read my audiobooks, I also drop down to my radio voice. So it was The Dark Side of Discipline with Craig Ballentine. And so, I'm doing that, and it's 4 hours of recording with a little break. And there were times where I started getting up into my motivational podcast voice, which I've had for a while. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I can take the easy way out and just carry on that way. Or I can mentally grind it out. I don't know, it's like, oh yeah, you're just reading a podcast or reading an audiobook. That's not really that tough. It is if you want to do it right. And so I had to take a little break, come back, and finish strong. When especially as a person with introverted tendencies, talking for 4 hours is like a special kind of hell. So, but I thought, the people who are going to be listening to this want the best version of it.
Yeah.
And so I got to deliver the best version. So that's just like a little small real life episode or example of that 24/7, there's a camera on you. And that's the integrity aspect. And it makes you play up a level in life when you do that. But back to your note about being connected with other high performers, it's the best thing, man. It really is.
So real quick, you do a 4-hour audiobook and you have introverted tendencies. How do you recover? What's Craig's go-to recovery method?
It's interesting. I've evolved over time, where in the past that would have knocked me out for the rest of the day. But it was Valentine's Day, and so I went to Dairy Queen and got my wife she loves red velvet, so they had like a red velvet blizzard. So by the time I got to Dairy Queen and walked home, I was still physically exhausted, but I was starting to come back. And then, I got home, the kids were like super happy and everything. And I bounced back from it pretty quickly. But in the past, and I know some other introverts who, like, whenever they spoke at Bedros's event, this one guy said, I just go back to my room, I turn the lights off and lie down for 4 hours. I was never that bad, but it does wipe you out.
Yeah, definitely.
The physical act of talking.
Yeah, definitely.
But over time, much like when I used to go to events, like if I was to come to one of your events and there's all these other people in the room, 15 years ago, I would have been a wallflower. But now, mostly through spending time with Bedros, I know how to work a room. I just watch him and go, oh, I get it. He's California. This is Bedros in California cool mode. That's what I'm going to do. And so I practice it next time, and it'd be a little janky, as he would say. And then the next time is a little better and a little better. And now I can just, go in and, appear like I'm not introverted, but it's I wouldn't say it's forced, and it's not acting, but it's definitely a skill set that I built.
That's what I was going to say. It's a skill set.
Yeah.
Like, and it's pushing. And what it is, I think, is a lot of times it's just pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone is when it comes down to.
It's not taking the path of least resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing that we do in life. And that's, the message of the book is cold plunging is actually the path of least resistance, even though it's like kind of uncomfortable. It's actually the path of least resistance compared to the harder thing you should be doing. And the path of least resistance is not the road you should take.
No, never. Can you talk about and you kind of broke it down earlier, but I want people to hear this, the 3 steps to build unshakable discipline.
Yeah. So the 3 are the elimination, preparation, and connection. And so elimination, if it's porn or a phone addiction, you got to learn how to block that
Identify
stuff.
it, right?
Yeah. And you can use the Opal app, you can use website blockers, there's all these things we talk about in the book so that you just get it away from you. If you're addicted to potato chips, don't have them in the house. Right. But it's the flip side of the connection, which is eliminate the negative people and influences and environments. So when I wanted to stop binge drinking, I didn't go to the bars, obviously. If you want to stop drinking, going to bars is a horrible idea.
Change your environment.
So I eliminated myself from there. I eliminated some toxic people from my life, but mostly what I did was I simply spent time with my drinking friends in non-drinking environments. So instead of, hey, Saturday afternoon, let's go to the bar, Saturday morning, let's go on a hike. Let's go to the gym. Let's play golf really early. Something like that. That then, in the afternoon, if they want to go drink, fine, but I'm not going to join you. But I've spent good time with you. I'm not, you're still my best friend from grade school. I'm not going to ditch you because you drink beer on Saturday night. So it's that environmental change. So elimination is first. Because if you have a bad habit, you want to put as much friction in the way of you doing it as you possibly can. Then you flip over to the planning and preparation. And if you have a good habit, you want to make the good habit as easy as possible to do. You want to grease the groove. So if you want to finally start eating well, either do all your meal prep on Sunday, or now in this day and age, you can get somebody else to do it for you and get some meal prep service. And you've made the path to success smoother. And then finally, the connection piece is, if you want to be really fit, get fit people in your social circle. If you want to be a drunk, get drunk people in your social circle, whichever way you want to go. It's guaranteed that once you surround yourself with those people, you're going to get their traits.
That's 100% true. I talk about it all the time with men. I'm like, if you're the fifth fat dad hanging out in the backyard around the barbecue, well, that's your life.
That's your future, man.
If you're the one fat dad and there's 4 fit dads, guess what's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
You're either going to get outed from that group, and you're not going to you're not going to want to do it, or you're going to, over time, you're going to get in shape. That's just the way that it is.
Yeah, but you're not going to make them fat.
No, you won't make them fat.
No.
So, I mean, Craig, why write this? Why did you feel like you needed to write this book? What was the purpose for you to write this book? Because this is great, man.
Yeah. So there's two. For a long time, I had these effortless discipline systems and teaching them to all these types of people, but I never had the right vehicle for the book, because it doesn't seem like a long enough book to me, and there's no real journey. And then because my last book I wrote over 6 years ago. And so it's been a long time since I wrote a book. And I just started seeing this trend. People chasing things for external validation and sacrificing what mattered. And the thing, they weren't chasing alcohol. They weren't chasing partying. They were chasing good, quote unquote, good things, working out more and cold plunging and reading a book a week.
Yeah. But
those things still sacrificed what mattered. And then it happened to a couple of good friends of mine whose marriages crumbled partly because of this. It wasn't the only thing, but it was partly and very heavily influenced by their chasing of all these other things and not focusing on what matters, not focusing on the level 10 problem. And when I saw it once, I was like, that's interesting. When I saw it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, I thought, this is a real problem. And like you said, this is something that's needed now because social media is a big influence on this, because you can open up your Explore page and, at least I open up my Explore page and I feel like, man, there's like 9 different physical challenges here that maybe I should go do this. Like I see, who Chris Bumstead is? I'm like, maybe I should get back into bodybuilding. No, I don't need to get back. But you see, like, man, that guy did a great job, and he's like, look at all the people that like him, and like he's winning, and like, maybe I should like get into bodybuilding. Like, even though my rational brain says no, you shouldn't. There's this part of the human that makes you want to get more applause from the tribe.
That's true. So
it is.
So what would be your challenge to men with this book, with their life? What would you challenge them to do?
The biggest challenge is this. Figure out where your finish line is. Like your personal finish line. And run your own race. And that's it, man. Like, even if everybody's running in the other direction, have the courage, the clarity, and the confidence to run your own race, to be comfortable in your own skin. And you will not have any regrets.
Damn, that was good. I like that a lot. That was beautiful.
Yeah, man. I've been thinking about it. I think about this stuff all the time.
That was good. Shit.
And so have you ever taken the Clifton Strength Finders test? Yeah. Do you remember what you are?
I don't remember that one.
Okay. So
I could probably pull it up.
There's 32 traits, and I don't remember what I'm bad at, but I'm good at strategic thinking, visionary, futuristic. There's 2 other ones I can't remember. But I think about vision and the future all the time. Like I've got my life planned out until the end of August. And right now we're recording this in February. Like, I know what I'm doing on August 13th. Like most people don't know what they're doing in 3 hours from now. But and it's good to a point. It's a little bit, it can be detrimental to a point because I get very fixated. Like once I say, 5 o'clock on Thursday, I'm doing this, it's very difficult for me to like rearrange that. Or if I hear somebody, like my wife is different than me and she says, hey, maybe next Wednesday we'll go and do this thing. I immediately think that 100% we are doing that thing on Wednesday afternoon. So anyways, but I think about people's futures and I think about what they can accomplish. And I'm very optimistic about people. And I think that most people underbelieve in themselves. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. And so I really think set higher expectations for them. I see what they're capable of. I see this beautiful future for them, and I want to make sure that they don't throw it away because of something silly like what they see on their phone.
Oh yeah, it's so damn good, man. So I just pulled mine up. Futuristic, strategic, belief, relator, self-assurance.
Hey, I mean, the two of them are the same. I got to go back and see what mine are, but I'm definitely not. What are the other three?
The future
Relator?
relator, self-assurance, belief.
What is a relator?
I don't know.
Does that like mean you're empathetic?
Let's pull it up here.
Oh, one of mine is intellect.
I didn't get that one.
But I think intellect is like he's just like collecting information. Because I was very good at school. Like I'm very good at sitting and memorizing
Yeah,
things.
that's where I might as well
like,
tap out at that one. Craig, where can we find this book? Where do you want us to buy this
so
book?
it'll be on Amazon, hard copy, paperback, ebook, audiobook very soon, and darksideofdiscipline.com.
Excellent, man. Do you have a solid date?
Well, you can pre-order the ebook
So
right
just pre-order,
now, but it'll
you just want us to pre-order the ebook now.
Yeah, or go to darksideofdiscipline.com and get on the wait list, and we'll let you know when it's coming out for sure. But it's like I think it's like April 18th.
Perfect. All right, I'm getting on the list. I want the hard copy. Yeah, awesome, man. Listen, you're done losing. You're done spinning your wheels, being disciplined and doing things for no reason. Mr. Ballantyne here has laid out the path. The question is, are you going to take it? You're going to take the path and actually do something for yourself and not just spin your wheels aimlessly. Guys, the darksideofdiscipline.com, Mr. Craig Ballentine, the most disciplined man in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir.